Hi, I'm Dr. Jeffrey Guild, physical therapist, and today we're going to talk about why Optimove was formed, a little bit about our story, and how we take on the upcoming epidemic about falls in our society that's coming up in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. So stay tuned. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Jeffrey Guild, physical therapist, and what we do is empower people to remain active and independent in their home and in the community and avoid going to a nursing home. So you may ask, how does Optimove do this? So the story for me started when I was 21 years old. And at the time, I was a strength conditioning intern working with Division I athletes. And of course, training for power and strength and agility and all these very vital things for elite athletes. And as I was studying more and more, I realized the upcoming epidemic that would happen with baby boomers, because as we get older and studying what happens to our body as we age, our muscle, of course, deteriorates as we get older. And more importantly, our fast twitch muscle fibers, or our fast twitch motor units, declines as we get older. So basically our ability to pop, to explode, the ability to stand up out of a chair, to get up from the floor, and to the ability to respond to falls declines as we get older. And yes, some of this does happen naturally as we get older, and even elite power athletes, as they get older, they will have some decline with this. But for people who train, this decline is a lot slower slope versus the rest of the population, where it tends to be a much steeper slope. So for those of us who are not training for this problem, there is going to be a fast, sharp decline in strength and power as we get older, and our ability to respond to falls as we get older. And that's where the strength training part of this came into play. So I actually did my undergraduate thesis on training for leg power in the older population to prevent falls. And at the time, it was still in the early stage about thinking about all this. And the question at the time was, even can older people, let's say past 90 years old, even get benefit from strength training? And the research really had to speak for itself at the time. And of course, what the big conclusion was, absolutely yes, there's a lot of benefit from strength training in the older population, especially past the age of 90, and focusing on power is also an important part, and very much helps to improve just everybody's daily lives, what we call function, right? Their ability to do things and to get around. And as I was studying this more and more, I saw that this was going to become a big problem if we did not jump in and change this. So I devoted my career to changing that problem, this upcoming epidemic of basically the baby boomers, who are going to be a large part of our population as we get older. Let's say about 5 years from now, as of this recording, 2023, the oldest baby boomers are 75. They're going to be 80 in 5 years. So what is our population going to be like at that time? Now, with the silent generation, so those over the age of 80, 85 right now, it's already a problem. And of course, the silent generation is having a massive issue with falls and a massive decline in their physical abilities. Why? Because they are experiencing that, what people think is that inevitable decline of strength, of power, of physical abilities, of balance. And they are experiencing this, what people think is inevitable. And they are experiencing the falls, the decline, the loss of independence, the mass moving of people to facilities where they're going from independent living to assisted living to skilled nursing to hospice at a very fast rate. And we see this, of course, all the time as physical therapists, as we're working with this population. And of course, the thought is that it is inevitable. And this is also the mentality of the silent generation themselves. We work with them all day, every day. And there's a major thought difference between the silent generation and the baby boomers, and especially the younger baby boomers and the Gen Xers. The thought of, yes, mom, you can do something about this. You can prevent these things from happening. And the thought process of some of the older medical community and the thought process of the silent generation as well, this just comes with age and this is just to be expected. And well, how long do I expect, did I really expect to live? And all these sorts of problems. This is a major problem where you have an entire generation experiencing the perceived inevitable. And the key word there is perceived, because it does not have to be like this. Now, there are some challenges coming up, especially with the COVID pandemic and technology encouraging us to move less and less. This is going to become an increasing problem if we don't get our population moving faster and acting more proactively about these things. So this is a major problem that is preventable. And we're going to talk about this through the rest of this. Now, of course, the solution for this is the way that our population reacts as they get older, how much we move and how proactive we are as these problems coming up, and how much do we respond to a balance problem when it comes up or a fall when it comes up. And overall, massive action, massive implementation, and maximum effort towards this problem can prevent this perceived inevitable decline of a generation that's coming up that is going to overtake us as far as numbers. So this is going to become a major healthcare crisis. So what to do? After I graduated from undergrad, did my undergraduate thesis on training for leg power to prevent falls, I then worked as a personal trainer in a healthcare fitness setting, if you will. So after I graduated college and after I'd worked with elite athletes and worked in cardiac rehab, so did some volunteer work there and got some experience in physical therapy and other things, I worked as a personal trainer in a fitness setting that was connected to a large hospital setting here in the Dallas area. And I worked with mostly older individuals and people with physical limitations. So because my passion at that point was working with people to prevent injuries. And so screening for movement problems in advance to prevent injuries. And this was a big thing at the time among strength conditioning coaches and personal trainers, where you could identify basic movement problems in people and you could prevent that hamstring pull, months and years in advance. You could prevent the shoulder injuries months and years in advance if you got them moving in the correct way at a very basic level. Then by getting them moving better in general, you could prevent a lot of injuries. And I was implementing that with all my clients at the time. And of course, my passion there led me towards physical therapy school, both from the movement perspective, but also that passion for the balance and falls perspective. And I was applying a lot of what I'd learned from my thesis as well, doing a lot of agility work with people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, even teaching Olympic and powerlifting to people in their 50s and 60s and 70s, and helping people become healthier by becoming stronger and more powerful in general. So I was already applying a lot of what I had learned previously, working with elite athletes and studying the topic, from book and research, then being able to take it towards an actual population of people, and quite successfully. When I went to physical therapy school, my passion, of course, was originally thinking about, okay, I want to be a great manual therapist and help people, with, movement problems and solve back problems, hip problems, and all this stuff. Until I ran into my mentor who got me into vestibular disorders. So vestibular disorders are basically dizziness and vertigo types of disorders. So it's basically a dysfunction of the main central balance system, or the inner ear balance system, or the central balance system, whatever you want to think of it. And this system was very relevant, of course, to balance and falls. And I saw it as this is the key that was the connection between what I'd been doing previously to prevent falls and how to really help people to prevent falls, because this is the main central balance system. So becoming a vestibular specialist was that key. And so I immediately started working with her, not only during an 8-week clinical, but I also worked with her for my first year out of physical therapy school. And during that time, we worked with a lot of people with dizziness and vertigo and balance disorders, both older and younger people. And it was very applicable to what I wanted to do to pursue this problem about preventing falls in the older population as the baby boomers were getting older. Now, there was a problem that I saw already with this. In talking with other healthcare providers, doctors and nurses and other people, as well as just the general population as a whole, getting people to think about these problems is a lot like getting a 35-year-old to think about estate planning or a will. And that is the fact that people are immediately excited by it. And, I totally know that this is a big problem. And no, I need to find that specialist. And where can I find one? Can you give me the name of that attorney? And I know I need to do that. And I know my parents have been telling me to do that. And, I know, I got a wife and kids, and I got a business, and, got, property, and, whatever else. I know I need to get going after this. And people keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and they don't get to it. And balance and falls and dizziness and vertigo disorders and remaining active and independent in one's home and all the solutions that we're talking about here are a lot like that. And the reason is because it's not immediately urgent until it is. And then when it's urgent, it's catastrophically difficult to address. So in the case of a 35-year-old with estate planning, it's when both parents go on a flight together and leave the children with grandma and grandpa, and both of them maybe pass away. Or they're about to get booked on a flight and they're urgently scrambling to set up their will or finish something on their estate planning that they didn't finish. So if something happens to them on that plane, their children have somewhere to go. This is very similar to balance and falls. And these are the things that the older population will often tell the younger population to, you got to think ahead about this. You need to plan for retirement. You've got to get that good education so you can get a job. You need to do all these things in advance and plan for it, because this is going to come up if you don't think about this now. Think into the future, think ahead. Now there's a gap where we have an entire population of people where similar values need to be applied to their physical abilities, their fall prevention, their balance, their physical strength, their leg power, their ability to remain active and independent in their home and the community, their ability to remain stimulated and socially interactive, and to actively engage in high-level complex cognitive things, basically to be able to continue to learn, to continue to engage in life on a regular basis. And if we slow down, then those things are going to decline, and then we will experience that inevitable decline towards falling, ending up in a nursing home, having to move out of our house, and losing our independence. Now, for myself, after becoming a vestibular specialist, I worked in inpatient rehab settings where it's that multidisciplinary team where physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, neuropsychology, daily visit from doctors and all that stuff in a intensive rehab setting where we're trying to get people who are very medically complex and very physically limited home. And that's our main job, is to discharge them home safely or to the next level safely, where they go from acute care to a rehab setting. I worked in skilled nursing, hospice, even in pediatrics for a time, assisted living, memory care. I worked a lot in memory care. Love working in memory care because it's amazing working with that population of people and their families. It's absolutely a joy. So there's a lot of benefit that a lot of people can get working on their physical abilities, working with rehab professionals, working with fitness professionals to try to improve their physical abilities. And it's amazing the results that can happen. You're never too old to work on your physical abilities. You're never too old to work with a personal trainer or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist to improve your ability to move around better, to walk faster, for your balance to be better, to strengthen your overall abilities so that you remain active and independent as long as possible, and you can remain where you want to be as long as possible, whether that's in your home or independent living or wherever it is. You have control over this. And that's the exciting, important part. Now, as I was working in all these different settings, I was in skilled nursing at the time. And it was one of the places where I was actually working as, we call a staff physical therapist, staying with the team for a long period of time. Other than that, I was jumping around quite a bit. Now, typical entrepreneur, right? The gap was I was seeing that no matter who the person was, there was always a gap between when we would discharge them from the skilled nursing facility. So they go from acute care, they'll say they fall and break a hip. They're 90 years old, they go to skilled nursing, and they stay in skilled nursing for a certain number of weeks. And the plan is to discharge them home. And so as a licensed therapist, we have to sign off and say that, yeah, they're good, they're safe to discharge home with this plan in place. Now, the problem was I was very rarely satisfied with the plan in place. And it's not that we weren't getting them there. The problem was with the amount of time allotted in that facility and then with the available options afterward. And a lot of times, home health would be the only option. If you've experienced home health before, it's a very low level quality of care. And I'm not just saying that just because. Now, if you're familiar with home health, you know that it tends to be a very low quality care. And sometimes you can get lucky and you can get a great therapist. And believe me, they'll do a very good job for a short period of time for the place, but I guarantee they'll move on. You're not going to be able to find a consistent home health company or therapist or situation where that's sustainable over the long term. And the reason is because of the system, is because of the continued cuts to the system. It's not the healthcare providers. And sometimes it's not even the companies themselves. Sometimes it is, but it's the system that's broken. So the gap was getting people high quality care in their home to be able to provide them rehab, specifically physical therapy in this case, in the home environment, because getting someone who's 90 years old to an outpatient setting can be quite difficult. The amount of energy, time, and difficulty it is to get them to an outpatient clinic can be very difficult, especially a lot of times the best outpatient clinics for people who are older and if you're trying to prevent falls and address neurological disorders are in large hospital institutions. And so getting people to large hospital institutions is a problem. And one of the benefits I saw early on in my career working with my mentor was we were in a small outpatient clinic where people could just easily walk in. Now, people really enjoy just being able to walk in. But of course, if it rained, then 90% of the people couldn't show up. And of course, that was a problem. So we had a number of reasons here to think, okay, why not just fill this gap? Why not just go to people's homes? Why not just go to them and serve them on their terms, however they want to do it? And that became the idea of Optimove. Let's go to people and serve them on their terms, however they want to do it, however long, however often, whatever outcome they want to do, whatever outcome they want to get back to doing. What do they really want to do? And let's pursue that. Now, of course, if you're a rehab professional, that you know the home environment is one of the best places that you can work with a patient or a client, is because that's their home environment. Then you get to see what real life is like. You get to see what the chairs are like and how unstable they are. You get to see the width of the doorway, and you get to see all the dangers of the home that requires a trained eye as a rehab professional. So it can be very difficult, even if you get video and everything else, it can be very difficult to get a layout of really what the home environment is like. And so by working with people in their homes, we were able to bridge that gap between that kind of optimal level of rehab, which would be in people's homes, their specific environment, and working with people in their specific environment and being able to bring that to them. And so already we had formulated an idea of how do we address this falling epidemic that was coming up as the baby boomers get older? Again, we only have about 5 more years. What we've been able to do in providing physical therapy services on a mobile basis to people's home environments is empowering people to get back to things like going to their grandchildren's graduations and to weddings, and to be able to fully attend life again as if they had not declined in the first place. And I'll give you an example. So we had an 85-year-old who, when we met her, she had problems just walking across, her house at the time. And what she was able to get out of working with us is several months later, being able to go to the University of Texas and climb the bleachers at her grandson's graduation. I'll give you another example. We had a gentleman who was about 95, and even though he was transitioning to hospice, and I call it the good hospice, where he was actually on hospice for about 9 months, more for support more than anything else, he went to 2 of his granddaughter's weddings and was able to dance with them during those weddings. And we actually worked on training with him. We would have our client liaisons go and actually dance with him, and our physical therapist would assist, and he would be able to train to get to the wedding and then be able to dance with his granddaughters. And we could provide the family, okay, here's the amount of time that he has until he, gives out and everything else. So we can set up a safety net, if you will. And so he was able to fully engage with his family again when he thought that he would never be able to do that. Other examples include a 95-year-old who was completely bedbound and would be for the rest of his life. But after he became bedbound, he has continued to work with us about 3 times a week over a 3-year period. And he, not only has he not declined, he's actually improved in his physical abilities. So he's able to continue to engage with his family. He's able to continue to live life and do what he wants to do on a regular basis and remain in his home with caregivers, and to be able to continue to live life with his family. Now, of course, we have countless stories about our clients who have had vertigo and other vestibular disorders get complete relief and resolution with the problem, and not only get rid of it, but also if it does come back, as sometimes it does, they have a number where they know they can call, and we show up quite quickly within a day or 2 or 3, and we're able to get to them and to solve the problem. What used to be a major catastrophic event for them in the case of positional vertigo, where the room is spinning and nausea and vomiting and fear and anxiety and who do I call, where do I go, and 10 healthcare providers later, these are true stories. They're able to just give us a call, and we're able to get there relatively quickly, and then everything becomes more matter of fact. There's not as much fear and anxiety. It's like, okay, it's come back. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's get rid of it. And so by eliminating the fear with people in the comfort and safety of their own home, we're able to give them a ton of hope and a ton of power, more importantly. And that is the main thing that we're able to help people do. We can put the power back in people's hands to be able to take care of themselves and the people that they care about. And we work with an endless number of clients where truly what we do all day, day in, day out, is we prevent them from having a fall. And if something does happen, if they go out to the hospital or they do have a fall, and what we do is we get in quickly and we implement a solution right away. We find out what happened. We find out why. And we're able to address the problem right from the get-go. Because one of the main ways to prevent that downward spiral of falls is that you act very proactively. When something happens, you act soon and you find the cause, and then you implement solutions immediately. Because a lot of times this downward spiral happens because action doesn't take place, because a fall happens and people put it off and just want to go to bed, rest, and let's just wait for it to get better and wait till my doctor, wait till I see my doctor in a week and then they'll have a solution. We're able to get to people quickly, and that way we're able to cut the problem off immediately and then be able to prevent that downward spiral from happening. And of course, since we're in people's home environments on a regular basis, we're able to be the boots on the ground. We're able to be that communication net to their other healthcare providers, their doctors. If their vitals are off, we're able to be that communication on the ground to our clients, other healthcare providers. And that can be very powerful for, of course, our clients, but also for their other healthcare providers as well. And it's about bridging the gap. It's about shortening the time frame between when we need to communicate something and when that communication actually gets passed off, and then the follow-up that happens afterwards. So that way you make sure that when that communication needs to happen and action needs to take place in healthcare, then it actually happens, and it happens very quickly, and the right things can be done as quickly as possible. Now, what we do tend to see is we do hear horror stories about people who do suffer fall problems. We'll hear about a mother-in-law who all of a sudden falls and hits her head and dies very suddenly when she was just having a little bit of a balance problem, but nothing real urgent. And all of a sudden she's passed away and now it's all over. We hear stories about when people get married, they leave places for their grandparents as, kind of place chairs, not because the parents have passed, but because the parents couldn't make it to the wedding, because they were not physically able to get there, because their physical abilities had declined so much that now we're leaving placemats for people because they can't physically get there. And you don't have to go through those types of problems. You don't have to experience that inevitable going from independent living to assisted living to skilled nursing to hospice and then, decline. You can act and prevent a lot of these problems in advance. And you can remain active and independent in your home if that's what you want to do. If you're already in independent living, you can remain there and then not have to go to that next level of care. If you have a parent or a grandparent who's beginning to experience these problems, the sooner you act, the better. Acting proactively is the best way to prevent these problems, because this is just like all other aspects of life. The more that you act preventively, it's just like diet and exercise and estate planning and planning for retirement and planning out a will. It's about all these things that the more we act proactively, the more you can prevent these problems. So improving people's physical abilities is the number one frontline solution to this problem. Now, these are not scare tactics. These are true stories, true examples of things that are happening in our society right now, and these are happening. This is reality, and if we don't accept it and address it, then we're not going to be able to confront the problem as it is right now. And then before you know it, we're going to have an entire generation of people who are falling at record levels if we go down the same path as the generation above them. So we need to act now. And back to the epidemic that's coming up, elevating the baby boomers' physical abilities and addressing some of these problems very proactively. So addressing balance and vestibular disorders and even neurological disorders such as Parkinson's and dementia. A lot of these things can be addressed much better and more holistically and proactively than they are right now. And if we get ahead of this, if we do this right now, then we can get ahead of the problem and prevent an entire generation of people from experiencing an epidemic of falls and decline. They don't have to be like the generation above them. They don't have to be like their parents. We don't have to accept that as people get older, then they fall and they decline and experience cognitive problems at the rate that the older generation did, because there's so many things that we can do now that we can prevent these problems to come up. And don't wait for technology. Don't wait for gene therapy and all this other stuff, and all that stuff should be pursued, absolutely, and science should be a part of the solution. But there's things you can do right now to solve this problem, both for yourself and someone you care about. The first thing, of course, just getting after it and exercise on a regular basis, even if that just includes walking on a regular basis, as long as you can. If it's 10 minutes, then start with 10 minutes. If it's 30 minutes, do 30 minutes. If you can go longer, go longer. And the more that you're up and active and moving, especially if you can be walking outdoors, that's even better. If you're using a walker or you have a balance problem already, get to your doctor, get to a physical therapist, and start addressing the balance problem problem now. Don't wait until something happens. Address the problem now. If you start noticing that you have a balance problem, or you have dizziness, or you don't even know if you have a dizziness or a balance problem because it's difficult to tell sometimes, get to your doctor and see a physical therapist or whatever professional will help find the solution for you. If you're having problems with your mobility overall and your home environment is becoming a problem, get an occupational therapist out there to do a home assessment and to discuss a home modification program that will make you safer for now and in the future. There's so many things that can be done to prevent these problems, and we don't have to accept this as a culture, and the baby boomers don't have to accept this as a generation. So hope this was helpful to hear a little bit of our story, who we are and what we do, can shed some light on what we're doing, why we're getting all this information out there. And if you like this information, subscribe to our channel and we'll love to get more out to you.